So I have one question for you. It's a simple question, not such a simple answer. Do you have anxiety? Do you have anxiety? Do you have anxiety over COVID, over the economy, over social unrest and political turmoil and forest wildfires and hurricanes and the economy? And I'm getting anxious just talking about it. Probably you are too. So I'm Baruch Halevi, also known as B, and I am co-founder of Soul Centered. Soul Centered is a spiritual center for meaning, for purpose, for healing, and the afternoon of life. What's the afternoon of life? Glad you asked. It is the second half of life. The second half of life when we face all of these things, plus life's T's. That's what I call them. Tests, transitions, trials, traumas, tragedies. We face it in the morning of life, but we're looking at it differently. We're different. We're not fully facing it, fully ready for it like we are in the afternoon of life. And we need to be ready for it. We need to deal with it. That's why we created Soul Centered, a place to deal with all of these life T's and everything that you are dealing with out in the world. One of which is anxiety. So this series of videos, which I'm starting right now, is going to be taking on anxiety and depression and the dark emotions that our society doesn't like to deal with. We don't want to deal with it individually, but in no small measure because our society doesn't want to deal with it collectively. It's time to take back our power and own these conversations, have these conversations. That's what it's all about. I'm a logotherapist by now training. The work of Dr. Viktor Frankl, author of Man's Search for Meaning, father of logotherapy, meaning-centered therapy. Logotherapy is all about finding meaning. And how do we find meaning? By choosing. And how do we choose? By taking back our power from our external circumstances, owning the one thing we can, our choice, finding our voice and using it and expressing it. And sometimes it ain't pretty, but so what? I'd rather deal with the darkness and be honest than live a life that's polished and painted and pretty and perfection, but it's not real. So if you want to have a real conversation, then join me right now in anxiety. This is part one, the anxiety about anxiety. We'll have more videos after this one. I want to talk to you about a personal experience I had that really brought our collective, our societal anxiety about anxiety, brought it to home. Some of you know my wife Ariella and I moved to Israel about 6 years ago, I guess at this point, retired being a rabbi, synagogue rabbi, moved from lovely Boston to the Middle East, to Israel, to not only Israel, but a mountain in the north of Israel, in the middle of nowhere. There was a lot of anxiety. There was the anxiety of getting the family there, of the economics of it all, the not knowing the language, culture, getting a family of 6 acclimated, finding a new profession. I mean, the list goes on and on. I was anxious, to say the least. It was the second time in my life I got on anti-anxiety medication. First time was after the loss of my father. So I went, got a prescription, all fine and good. And then I had to go get my driver's license. So I took in the forms, I filled them out, I went to the front of the line for the second time, for the third time, literally the most complicated thing I've ever done. Also the most humbling to start over driver's license, driver's ed classes, getting flunked the first time for not having my hands on 10 and 2. Lived 45 minutes for the DMV, back and forth and back and forth. Finally, again, get to the front of the line, they stamp denied. I'm like, out of your mind? Denied? Why am I denied? Because it says right here you're taking anti-anxiety medication, and it says here you're taking it for they had in Hebrew pachad. Pachad means fear. I'm like, yeah, and what's your point? First of all, and second of all, fear. Right? It's a little more nuanced than fear, but fine, I'll give you that. They said, well, you can't drive if you're on anti-anxiety medication. I said, are you freaking kidding me? Have you been out there? It's a jungle out there on the streets. Have you ever driven in the Middle East? Have you ever driven in Israel? If you didn't need anti-anxiety medication before, you're gonna need it afterwards. This is a preemptive strike, I said to them. I'm gonna need it afterwards. I got it before. What's the problem? You can't drive in Israel. They said it like this. You can't drive in Israel if you are taking this anti-anxiety medication. You have too much pachad. You have too much fear. I went back to the doctor. I had to have it nullified. They said, why didn't you just ask us in the first place? We would have told you. You can't put that on your application. I said, what was I supposed to do? They said, lie. I said, what a world, what a country, what a world we live in. But the truth is, whether it's Israel or whether it's America, this is how we treat anxiety. You're supposed to lie about it. You're supposed to deny it. You're supposed to pretend you don't have it. What else in the year 2020 is in the closet? That's a pretty lonely thing. Anxiety and depression and a few other things are in there, but not much more. We've pretty much let everything out of the closet. We can't let this one out. Why? Are you telling me that everybody doesn't have some level of anxiety? And I have this conversation with people all the time. They say, I don't have anxiety. Well, there was a recent poll that came out that said 1 in 2 people during COVID right now have reported having anxiety or feelings of depression. I'm like, that's it? The other half either didn't understand the question or they're lying. We all have anxiety. Is it always clinical? Absolutely not. Is it situational? For sure. But we all live with a level of anxiety. We're human beings, right? We live on a rock. Whether you realize it or not, the last I checked, you live on a big rock. And by the way, where's that rock located? It's located in outer space. Just because the skies are sunny doesn't mean you're not floating around in the great unknown. And have you thought about this? You're whirling around at 1,000 miles an hour right now. Right? I don't like to go fast. It's making me nervous just talking about it. And what are we whirling around? A hot ball of fire called the sun, which they say is going to burn out, hopefully not anytime soon. Anxious? Yeah, I'm anxious. If you're not anxious, then you haven't thought it through. Or as a teacher of mine said in philosophy class in college, ain't none of us getting out of here alive. I think he meant the class, but he was also an existentialist talking about life as well. You're going to die. Everybody you love is going to die. This is a rough ride called being alive. We have anxiety. We're anxious. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but it's something that is built into the fabric of existence. It's part of what makes us tick. And it's not all bad. And it doesn't mean you have to live paralyzed by it. In fact, that's exactly the point. To take back our power means to take back our voice, to be honest about who we are and where we're at and what we're dealing with. It begins by being honest, by speaking the truth, by being real. So yes, you have anxiety and I have anxiety. Some of us are on anti-anxiety meds. Probably the rest of us should consider it. I spend so much time talking to clients about the truth, about their feelings, about their anxiety, about their depression, about their darker feelings, giving them permission, just permission to feel. You can't feel it, you can't heal it, you can't name it, you can't tame it. It begins by being honest, by being authentic, by being real. If you are dealing with anxiety or depression or any of the dark feelings and emotions, then start by being honest and being real. Find somebody to talk to. Find a therapist, a logotherapist, find a pastor, find a confidant, a friend, somebody you can talk to who's equipped to hold the honesty, to hold the truth, to help you be real. Get on the right medications. Where do you think this came from? It's a gift from above. These are opportunities in medication, not to make it go away. I've never found a medication that makes my anxiety, my existential doubts, and my primal fears go away. I just don't share them with the DMV in Israel anymore, but I still carry them. I have just learned how to use them and not be used by them. I've learned how to harness them, which we'll talk about in forthcoming videos. It is all energy. It is all here for a reason. And you are not alone in feeling what you feel. Over and over, I talk to clients who say the same thing. They feel like they're the only ones. They feel small for having to deal with their anxiety, with their doubts, with their feelings, with their fears. It doesn't make you small. It makes you human. And to deal with them makes you honest. It makes you real. We're going to be taking anxiety and depression and the dark emotions head on. Why? Not to be afraid to leave our house and get into our car, not to think about constantly that the earth is spinning around the hot fire of the ball of fire. You're saying, enough, you're freaking me out. But that's the point, to take back our power so that you don't have to be freaked out, so that you don't have to live in reaction. That's the point. That's the reason why we're here, to learn how to grow, to learn how to live. As Dr. Frankl says, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom. Our work, our job is to stop reacting to the stimuli when it impacts us, to our circumstances when they're not going our way, to stop reacting and start responding, to be responsible, able to respond. You want to be able to respond, then it begins by being honest about what you're feeling and what you're dealing with, creating a level playing field. Get on the right medication and take back your power. Do your work. Look at what's making you anxious, what's making you feel depressed, what's making you feel whatever you're feeling. Nothing outside of us can make us feel anything. It is our choice as to how we feel. It is our choice as to how we respond. This is the essence of what it means to fully be human, to fully be powerful, to own our power. And that begins with finding our voice and exercising it. So that's what we're going to continue talking about right here, is the truth about our feelings, taking back our power, stop reacting, start responding, to choose our own way forward, to choose your own way. Join me for future conversations. You can learn more at mysoulcentered.org. Shoot me an email at info@mysoulcentered.org. Until then, I'll see you the next time. Namaste, shalom, salam, peace.